There's no doubt about it, we are in for some very worrying times in the UK. We may well be facing a recession, and I'm very sorry to say that I think that I was right in respect of Rachel Reeves' ludicrous budget, along with the rest of the government's overly ambitious plans and their goals to grow the economy. That doesn't really seem to be the case. But before we get into that, if you are new to me, I'm Daniel Shensmith, a barrister of England and Wales. I'd be really grateful if you subscribe down below. It's free, it takes a second, and that helps me grow the channel. I don't have a big team behind me, it's just me. There's no big media company behind these walls, it is just me. And I depend on you to help grow my channel. So what are we talking about here? Well, the UK has shrunken its economy for the second month in a row. And if it continues doing that, we will enter a recession. And that's obviously bad for everybody. So very broadly speaking, the GDP, or gross domestic product, is one of the main measures of the growth of an economy. Growth is good and shrinking is bad. It's generally accepted that a growth rate of 2 to 3% is considered normal for a developed economy. This will typically be higher for an economy that is still developing. But if the growth rate is below 2% or at worst negative, the economy is shrinking and possibly entering a recession. Obviously that is bad, it means standards of living will go down and we want to avoid that. Oddly enough, if an economy grows too rapidly, that could be bad as well because it could lead to bubble and burst scenarios, and so markets could be overinflated with a high risk of a crash. But obviously we do want a growth in the economy to gradually improve the standard of living. Now, what's going on here is the economy has shrunk for the second month in a row, causing major concerns, despite all of the promises of the growth and the reset and everything else by this new government. Now, just to be clear, they've only had a short while in government, so this is not to be overly harsh, you understand, but it's certainly not a good sign. So what's going on here is the Office for National Statistics has estimated that the GDP has fallen by 0.1% in October. And that follows a fall of 0.1% in September. So 2 consecutive months of shrinkage is certainly not a good thing. So here I'm going to play you just a snippet, I promise, of Rachel Reeves' reaction to this. And I'm not going to be too harsh, but I do think it is a teensy-weensy bit disingenuous. Let me play it to you first.
The numbers on GDP are disappointing, but it's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor economic growth and stagnant living standards in just a few months.
Now, to be fair, it would be unrealistic to expect a magical turnaround in a few weeks or a couple of months, and it has sort of been a bit of a stagnant economy for over the last 10 or 15 years or so, notwithstanding COVID, which I'll come back to in a moment. But it doesn't really give the full picture. So the fuller picture would be really to look at the last 10 years, or going back many decades. We can look at the Office for National Statistics here, looking at the GDP growth, and I can give you a few pointers as to what happened, and we can all make an assessment. So let's take a quick look at what happened. I won't bore you with every little detail, but I do find this sort of stuff interesting when I look at it. So let's say if we work backwards and we look at 2023, a growth of 0.3%. Now, this could be for a number of reasons. It could be from high inflation. It could still be from recovery from the pandemic and so on. If we go back to 2021, this was a growth of 8.6%. Now, you remember when I said a developing economy would have a higher growth rate? This is most likely a result of the bounce back, obviously, from COVID, and so that would sort of imitate in many ways a developing economy, because we're coming out of a lockdown, a bounce back in the economy, so a growth rate of 8.6% was probably expected. This is following a shrinkage of 10.3% in 2020, obviously because of the COVID-19 lockdown. Then we can look at 2009, the economy shrank by 4.6%. That was obviously around the time of the global financial crisis and the collapse of major financial institutions. Then we can look at 1991. The economy shrank by 1.4%. This was obviously the end of the 80s boom and a combination of high interest rates, falling house prices, declining consumer confidence, and the early 1990s recession. Going back to 1980, obviously we had Margaret Thatcher's reforms and policies that were aimed at reducing inflation but led to higher interest rates and a sharp decline again in industrial output. And so we could go on and look at all of these things and look at patterns, but if we ignore to some degree the massive dip caused by the pandemic and the bounce back which you often see in markets anyway in 2021 with 8.6 growth, You can see really going back here, we've had a growth rate of 1.6, 1.4, 2.7, 1.9, 2.2. This is going back now to 2014, a growth of 3.2%. This is all around about the accepted rate, but not particularly fantastic. So over 2% in a few cases in some years and 3.2% in 2014. So not particularly fantastic, but not overly drastic either. Obviously, taking aside for the out of the ordinary pandemic and the bounce back in the following year. So overall, you could draw some averages and estimates there and say it wasn't overly fantastic, but it was not absolutely devastating either. So just not fantastic, really, is probably the best way of putting it. But here we are now with the second month of decline, and the reports still say that businesses and manufacturing industries are cautious, and there's been reportedly the sharpest drop in activity in October, together with the services sector, which is the bulk of the UK economy, stalled with zero growth. So overall, businesses are still concerned, and this is a serious concern because of the second month of shrinkage in a row, and businesses just don't seem to have that confidence. Personally, I think the budget needs to be rethought, and it does need to be changed because I can't see this changing for the positive anytime soon. Now, there is another story I'd like to talk to you about in just a moment, because there's been a number of organisations now accused of job adverts that are discriminatory, in that they are only open to applicants who are of Black, Asian or ethnic minority backgrounds. More about that in just a moment. On another note, you'll know that I love to share great products and services with you, and you'll probably know with the Black Belt in the Black Belt Barrister that I'm a bit of a fitness and health fanatic. So I'm really pleased to introduce you to a company called Wholly that produces iced teas, energy drinks and hydration drinks, but not full of rubbish that some other drinks may be, mentioning no names. But these are absolutely fantastic. And many of you know that I stopped drinking alcohol completely about a year and a half ago now, and I've never felt better. But because I stopped drinking alcohol and I didn't have any recreational drink, I was always looking for something else. So these Wholly drinks have really filled that space for me. And in fact, this is a really special edition because they've got some new Christmas flavors, limited edition. So this is baked apple, this is winter punch, and this one is Frosty Fox. So this one's Frosty Fox. I'm going to give this a go. This is an energy drink in refreshing candy flavor. Let's give this one a go. The smell is really fruity, really quite refreshing, like almost like a mint. Let's give it a go. Wow. Really quite uplifting, quite fresh. Hard to describe. Really, really fresh, really fruity, really kind of uplifting. But there's also these others here as well. This one is the winter punch. So let's give this, I imagine you have this hot or cold. It's an iced tea, but I imagine you have it hot or cold. Wow, that is really like a mulled wine. You can have that hot or cold. Very nice. And this one is the baked apple. That's nice. That's probably my favorite. Wow, that is really like a pie baked with apple. Really quite nice. But as I say, these are limited edition flavors just for Christmas, so get in while you can. But there's also a fantastic deal for new customers. If you get in as a new customer, you also get this thermo shaker, so you can have hot or cold drinks. And you can enjoy them as a hot tea in the evening. We often drink hot herbal teas in the evening. And not only is there a fantastic discount, but you can use my discount code on top of the discount, which is £5 off using Barrister 5 or 10% off if you prefer percentages on a larger order or an ongoing order. Just use the code Barrister at the checkout and it will apply that discount for you. The link's in the description. The codes are on screen. Do enjoy the drinks. I've enjoyed them for quite some time now, and as I've promised you before, I would not bring you products that I don't recommend or use myself. I've had these drinks for quite a while now, and if I was to pick a favourite out of today's new ones, it would be the apple, because I love baked apple pies, and this one is really nice. So cheers. So back to those job adverts, one of which is from the Environment Agency. Now, just to caveat, I'm not making a statement of fact here that this advert is discriminatory. I'm just saying that there is a cause to question whether or not this is discriminatory for the reasons that I'll give in this video. And the reason that I say that is I'm not doing an extensive analysis on this. I'm just giving you an overview of what the law says and why it may well be discriminatory. And I do suspect that there may be action to follow against this organisation and several others. So first of all, it says there are 40 jobs available. They are available nationally in various towns and cities, staff grade 2. It's an internship, minimum salary of £24,000, working full-time, and a range of different roles available here. Now, the bit that people are obviously saying they think is potentially discriminatory is the criteria. Not the criteria that they must be studying for a degree and so on, or as part of the application they're in the final year or whatever, but the very first criteria, and that's this one here. So I'll give you an overview of what the law says about this sort of discrimination, because there can be a legal form, a lawful form of discrimination and unlawful discrimination, and it depends on a few things. So first of all, this is what the job advert says. It says the criteria number 1 is that you must, to apply for this internship job, you must be from Black, Asian or minority ethnic background. And then a UK Commonwealth or EEA national. You've got the right to work in the UK. And the criteria is based on the government's agreed list of ethnic groups as used in the 2021 census and includes Asian or British Asian, Black, British, Caribbean, African, mixed, etc., etc. And to see a list of these ethnic groups, to be eligible for the internship, please review the additional information pack attached in the application form. Now, first of all, the reason that this may be perfectly legitimate and perfectly acceptable is that under the Equality Act, whilst ordinarily it would be unlawful to treat any one group less favourably because of a protected characteristic, and that works in reverse. So if you're treating someone else more favourably, then you may be discriminating against the others because they are by default being treated less favourably, and that would include obviously race, religion, sex, gender, orientation, etc. So the reason that this may be okay in some situations is that if they've identified that they are lacking in the diversity within their workforce for a specific category of job, for example, they may be able to tailor an advert that on the face of it might otherwise appear discriminatory if they are working on a proportionate basis to achieve a legitimate aim to satisfy their criteria of diversity in the workplace, and therefore that advert may be okay. So they could provide an incentive, for example, for members of a certain group to apply for that role, and that might be okay. Now, the reason that this may not be okay is that out of these 40 jobs available, none of them, it says here, are available to anyone who is of white British background or white whatever background. You must be Black, Asian or minority background. Now, if there were, let's say, 40 jobs available and 5 of them were available to white or white British or white European or whatever, and the rest to make up the diversity within the whole of the workforce, that may be fine. But this, on the face of it, just excludes everybody, and so may well be discriminatory. I'm not saying that it is, because I haven't looked at the whole of the facts of the workforce, etc. I'm not doing that. But this really is to answer the question, because a lot of people have asked this question about this organisation and other organisations, and so that is the analysis that they would undertake. So if this were to make a determination, I'm not, but if I were, I would have to look at the whole of the workforce, the whole of the way that they've approached their recruitment, and whether or not this is a proportionate means to achieve a legitimate aim on the whole in accordance with the Equality Act. And so hopefully that explains why this may or may not be unlawfully discriminatory. And so hopefully that answers the question. This doesn't just apply to this organisation. I've seen adverts before now where there's a monetary bonus for certain groups to apply for a position. But in 1 or 2 adverts just recently, they've outright excluded anybody who is, on the face of it at least, anybody who is white, white British, white European, and so on. But either way, I hope you found that video interesting and useful. If you do, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel. That helps me grow. And as always, thank you for watching.